Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Feeling Smarter. As always, I'm joined by Tim Miller. G'day, Tim. How are you?
Aaron, going very well. Thank you. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. Well, today we're going to talk about the topic of tax cuts. And I know a lot of people were starting to think about the restructuring of their affairs, in particular things like salary sacrifice and so forth. And like all good things, Tim, the only thing we can guarantee is that they're probably going to change. So today we want to talk about not only the fact that these tax cuts were coming, but the fact that these tax cuts are now being amended. So maybe, Tim, to you, the first bit here is to explain maybe some of the quick summary of what these changes are going to do, and then where we see the greatest impacts actually happening.
Yeah, look, I guess probably the primary impact thing was that the original tax cuts were going to remove the 37% tax rate and amend the 32.5 down to 30, but make that a much broader range. I think kicking in from 45 right up to 200,000 or thereabouts. So what we've actually seen as a change, or as an announced change, is that the 37% will be retained. We will get that drop from 32.5 down to 30. There's no change, as was potentially rumoured, to the sort of the low threshold or the tax-free threshold there. But the rate that tax kicks off will go from 19 down to 16%. So we do see an increase from, I think it's 120 to 135 is the announced amount for the 30% bracket, and then from 135 to 190 instead of 200 is then the 37% bracket, and then we have the 45% bracket from the 190,000 is basically what I've seen from the announcements today.
Yeah, so naturally, a lot of the discussion here was talking about the benefits of salary sacrifice and contribution planning, where a lot of these higher income earners were going to be naturally getting quite a large amount of additional income in their own hands. Whilst there is a greater distribution of that now across all taxpayers, it does open up the opportunity, I guess, to look at how individuals might utilize that additional cash flow. Yes, there's cost of living pressures and stuff, and some of it might go straight back into the AGLs and the energy providers and the gas providers and stuff of this world. But equally, there may be opportunities for people to think about contribution strategies into super as well.
Yeah, look, I think so, and I think that's one of the I guess key points that I'd been reading about over probably the past month or so was the removal of that 37% bracket, and that didn't necessarily seem logical. Now, again, I'm not an economist, and so I just sort of read and make my own assessment of these sorts of things. But I think by maintaining that or retaining that bracket, albeit with some changes, it certainly, I guess, changes the thought process of a lot of people as to what they are going to do with that additional income. Whereas before, probably the low to middle income earners weren't getting as big a benefit from the change. Now they'll probably get a slightly bigger benefit than the higher income earners. So they're probably more likely to start to think about what strategies they might be impacted, or what strategies might benefit them from a contribution point of view.
Yeah, and the other one I think that might benefit from this as well is around the SMSF pension members, because we do know that we now have our ordinary minimum factors that we need to contemplate taking, and therefore there is a greater obligation on people to have to draw down, and ultimately they're either spending it or they're saving it. And if they're saving it, then there is going to be some tipping point ultimately where they're going to have a level of tax being applied. And we don't know yet what impact these changes of rates might have to senior Australian tax offsets and other things. But again, there's a very large cohort within the SMSF industry that I think will benefit from that lower tax rate and bracket, because of the fact that those retirement individuals are having to effectively force more money out now than they have ever had to do previously.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you've got those individuals, and as you and I have also been discussing other individuals that'll be impacted, are those that they're entitled to some form of tax offset from the ATO. So we know, what is the benefit going to be for the low income super tax offset, and is there then anything else for the senior Australian pensioner tax offset? So elements that we probably need to. The devil will be in the detail, as it always is, but that we'll certainly have a keen interest on, because when we're looking at various strategies, you always have to factor in those sorts of rebates to a lot of the conversations around effective strategies.
Yeah, and this leads me probably to the final point that I wanted to raise, and this is a path that Labor's taking with the Division 296 tax, so the $3 million threshold. So we know that the coalition government, in respect to these tax cuts, have done them over 3 tranches, and they, in essence, were legislated whilst they were in government and would require a future government to have to repeal or make amendments to be able to do this. So the one thing that I'm interested maybe in getting your comments on here as well is this whole issue of strategy and thinking about the implications of the Division 296, because it is a real live issue whereby that we could have not only amendments being made here in terms of the fact that we've got a Senate committee currently reviewing the Division 296 requirements, but we then naturally have the potential for a future change of government, and the previous government have made it very clear that they would look to amend this. Now, again, subject to whether they can or can't amend it would be whether they'd have the balance of power to be able to do it. But these are all the risks that we have in governments that continue to change and tinker and move along as they go along in their political journeys. And therefore, it poses some really interesting challenges for the way in which individuals might be looking to restructure because of these proposed Division 296 laws.
Yeah, look, and it's it's clearly top of mind, this Div 296, because everyone's talking about it, but it's an area that we don't necessarily have finality on the legislation yet, and so to use the phrase obviously that I used with you the other day, to jump at shadows with regards to any sort of contribution strategies around the Div 296, and to find the break, like before we start sort of bellowing on about the huge impact of money inside or outside of super, we need to put the brakes on with regards to actually find where that actual impact point is. And again, with far broader tax brackets, that impact point might be a lot higher before it's significant. So I think for everybody, it's always a matter of take a breath and let's wait and see what these changes do eventually bring. And then to the tinkering concept, at some point you would hope that the objective of super steps in to suggest that there's less tinkering in this space and they've got the tax regime correct. But I suspect that neither of us will see that in our entire working lives, Aaron, and potentially thankfully so.
Yes, very much so. Well, these tax cuts and the impact of some of what we've been talking about today is naturally, again, one of the things that we see having an impact on the SMSF industry, which is why Tim and I have put together our State of SMSF webinar being held on the 31st of January. So it is a free CPD event. If you haven't registered yet, you can come along and join. I think over 600 that have now registered for it. And yeah, we look forward to hopefully you joining us and finding out, again, not only about some of the impacts of these tax cuts, but naturally a range of issues that are impacting the SMSF sector throughout 2024. Once again, Tim, great to catch up.
Always a pleasure, Aaron.
Look forward to chatting next week. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.